welcome to episode 23 of the Retreadcast, the video podcast series for the global tyre retreading industry. As usual, I am joined by my father, David Wilson, who is the publisher of Retreading Business. Hello there, David, and what is on the schedule for today's podcast?
Thank you, Richard. Our interview today features one of the latest entrants into the tread rubber market, the Turkish manufacturer Z&Q Tyres, who market their range of pre-cured tread rubber under the Wolf brand name, and we'll be speaking to their export manager, Furkan Yaman, shortly. First, though, I wanted to focus on some of the key topics that will be featured in the upcoming issue of Retreading Business magazine.
Okay, then that sounds like a good place to start. So let's begin with the importance of retreading as a contributor towards the overall sustainability of the tyre industry. I know we have a couple of stories in the magazine this month that highlight this particular topic. Could you elaborate a bit more on what these articles are?
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, we've got a special report on the recently released carbon footprint analysis produced by the Azure Network in Germany, together with the Fraunhofer Institute. This study, which is part of a project funded by the Deutsche Bundesstiftung Umwelt to the tune of around €91,000, found that retreading tyres produce over 60% less CO2 emissions than new tyres of comparable quality. And this is mainly due to energy savings achieved during the manufacturing process and the reduced use of raw materials. It's particularly interesting to me because I recall being involved in a similar sort of project in the UK about 15 years ago. And it was particularly interesting to note that Christina Gut and her team reported similar difficulties in getting cooperation from the new tyre manufacturers on this project, the same way as I did all those years ago, which is disappointing to hear. The second story concerns the launch of the British retreader Vaculug's annual sustainability report. It's the first time that they've done this. Now, last year, Vaculug became the first independent retreader in the world to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2030.
Excellent. That is certainly interesting, and that's a very, very big commitment by Vaculug, beating a lot of governments' own net zero carbon emissions targets there. So that's really good to hear. What other features do we have in this issue?
Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome back Rafik Kosman to our team of contributors. He last worked for us about 15 years ago, so it's great to have him back. Now, he's prepared an article on the Egyptian retreading sector, including a visit to local retreader Al Bayan retread. It was interesting to note Rafik reporting a number of changes in the attitudes of fleets in Egypt to tyre maintenance and retreading, positive changes in attitude I'm talking about. We've got a profile also of the Spanish retreader Herca, and an interview with Elsie Alvarez, who runs the National Tyre Retreading and Recycling Associations in Costa Rica. We're also featuring, both in our magazine and on our website, interviews carried out by yourself at the IAA exhibition in Hanover with the likes of Goodyear, Continental and Michelin. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about those interviews, Richard.
Yeah, sure. Of course, I can talk a little bit about those interviews. No, it was fantastic to be at the IAA. We obviously we were there for our sister magazine, Commercial Tyre Business, but we discussed. It was a fantastic opportunity to talk more about retreading with all the major manufacturers, with sustainability being such a big part of all of their total fleet offering. So yeah, so obviously we have carried out those three interviews with Goodyear, Continental, Michelin. So I will start with Goodyear. With Goodyear, we principally talked to Mark Preedy from Goodyear. One of there was some interesting points we covered with that in that discussion, mainly the investments at their retread plant in Riom. They've invested quite heavily in their machinery and improving the product flow in and out of the site. They've also noticed a change in the trends in how in that more and more potential new fleet customers are asking questions about retreading and inquiring more about it, which principally I think is down to the the CO2 emissions targets that fleets need to fulfill according to the European Union, or they will be facing fines. And the final topic on that Goodyear article was part of their activities around their being the tyre partner for the IA European Truck Racing Championship, in that they retread all the race tyres and then fit them to their fleet customers. So there's all that ground that we cover with Goodyear. Continental, we visited Continental in Seville as part of their Generation 5 truck tyre launch. But we also had the opportunity to learn a lot more about their overall fleet solutions package. And what a part of that, I had the opportunity to talk to Ralph Bienak, the head of fleet solutions for Continental. Ralph has been historically quite involved with retreading, and he is responsible for a few retread plants, and is indirectly involved in quite a few now in Europe for Continental. But Ralph discussed how retreading is a larger part of their LODC approach, is their lowest overall driving cost approach, and how it is a key part of that overall philosophy of trying to reduce fleet costs. Ralph interestingly pointed out that retreading solutions in the approach that costs can be reduced by fleets by 30 to 40%. So you can read more about that in the article. And there's also some interesting comments on the possibility of van retreading in the future too. And finally, with Michelin, very sort of similar ground that we cover with Michelin. We covered, how retreading is a growingly important part of their overall fleet offer and their mobility solutions offer, how it lowers, the overall cost for fleets in operating a retread option. We also discussed, the differences in cold and hot retreading across Europe as well. And we had some interesting discussions regarding the annulment of the Chinese TBR import tariffs and subsidies. So we had some comments regarding that. The Michelin article, as we record this, hasn't been put live. I hope it will be live by the time that this podcast goes out. So there is a lot to cover with those main manufacturers.
Okay, well, that certainly seems like a comprehensive list of topics that you've covered there. One other topic that everybody's talking about at the moment is the soaring energy costs that retreaders are having to deal with costs doubling, tripling, quadrupling. And one article which we are expecting you fairly shortly is an in-depth analysis of the impact on energy costs on retreaders in Eastern Europe, written by our Eastern European correspondent, Vladislav Vorotnikov. And we're very interested to see what he has to say about that. So as you can see, we've got a wide range of features from around the world. But before we move on, though, I'd just like to mention that we lost a key personality from the retreading sector last month with the passing of Marvin Bozarth. Now, Marvin, who was the executive director of ITRA, which was the forerunner of the Tyre Industry Association throughout the 1990s, he was a true legend of the retreading industry. And we recently honoured him with a Lifetime Achievement Award in the Recircle Awards, and he'll really be truly missed by his friends and colleagues in the industry. So we pass on our heartfelt condolences to Marvin's family and his colleagues.
Yes, indeed. Marvin will be truly quite dearly missed in the industry. But anyway, let's move on from that and our analysis of our content we have on the website and in the magazine. And let's now take a look at our main interview and go over directly to Turkey to talk to Furkan Yaman from Z&Q Tyres.
Today on the Retreadcast, we're going over to Turkey in order to introduce our viewers to a relatively new entrant to the tread rubber market, the Turkish company Z&Q Tyres, who produce tread rubber under the brand name Wolf. You may well have seen their advertisement in the most recent issue of Retreading Business. We're very pleased to welcome to the podcast Furkan Yaman, who is the export manager for Z&Q Tyres. Good afternoon and welcome to the Retreadcast.
Good afternoon, David.
Okay, so let's begin by asking the first question, which is the Z&Q Wolf brand of tread rubber is a relatively new brand for the retread sector. However, Z&Q forms part of the larger Qualchem group. So can you tell us something about the history and structure of Qualchem and how the tread rubber business fits in the overall business?
Yes, of course, David. Actually, Qualchem has a strange history behind. Qualchem was established in 2007 in Chicago, Illinois, United States by Mr. Hakan. Mr. Hakan decided to establish a factory in Turkey in 2015 because of low labor costs. And in 2017, Zilan Taban, which is the biggest shoe sole manufacturer in European market, acquired shares of Qualchem and they created Z&Q Polymer brand together. Under Z&Q Polymer brand, we are mixing rubber compounds for tire industry, conveyor belt, automotive spare parts, and many other sectors as well. And then this specialty awakens us up, and we ask ourselves, why don't we also produce pre-cut threads, because we had enough experience with compounding part. And we also created Z&Q Tyres in 2020. And our first brand under Z&Q Tyres was Wolf, where we sell our pre-cut threads.
Okay, so Wolf is a really strong brand name. So how was that brand name conceived, and what impression do you think the brand name gives to the overall product offering?
Well, it was Mr. Hakan, chairman of board, who came up with this brand name. And what we wanted to give as an impression was that Wolf can live in different climates. As you can see from our slogan, wherever you go, we wanted our customers to be comfortable using Wolf in any conditions.
Okay, so you've got quite a broad range of products for the hot and cold retreading sectors. So could you please tell us a little bit about the range and how it's segmented?
Yes, of course. We wanted to provide solution for every need. In Wolf pre-cut threads, we have 4 segmentations, David, and they are separated by colors. Blue is our economic line, and diamond is our highest quality. And mileage promised increases from blue to diamond. And when it comes to hot retreading, we already had a self-confidence in rubber mixing. So we ask ourselves, why don't we take this experience to produce pre-cut threads? And therefore, we can produce rubber compounds for OTR, TBR, and solid hot retreading.
Excellent. So on your website, you say you reached your market share targets in 2021, by which we presume you're talking about your position in the domestic market in Turkey. So tell us about your position in the Turkish market and the kind of retailer that you're currently supplying.
Well, we are one of the leading companies in domestic market already, and we have achieved this goal in a really short time, David. And we are currently in European market as well. We serve to more than 10 countries in Europe now, but our aim is to carry our products to other continents as Africa and America. And our aim and our target is to sell 75% of our production to abroad countries. And we plan to achieve this goal by 2024.
I know that you also have ongoing projects that aim to increase your product range. So could you please share some of these projects with us as well?
Yes, of course, David. We are currently working on producing our solid tire brand under the brand name of Z&Q Warrior. We have started our production now, but we are planning to launch this in beginning of 2023. And there's another project that is running on actually, and it is really a hot topic for us as well. We also purchased agricultural equipments, and we will be producing agricultural tires in middle of 2023, and we are planning to launch it in middle of 2023. And we are so excited to announce this.
Fantastic. So Well, thank you very much for your time today, Furkan. We wish you well with the growth of your brand, and we look forward to welcoming you back on the Retreadcast soon.
It was really nice to see you, David. Thank you for the nice conversation.
Well, that's all for this edition of the Retreadcast. As always, we hope you found this edition of the podcast to be both enjoyable and illuminating. And we also hope that you'll be tuning in very shortly for another edition of the podcast soon. Until then, goodbye, and please stay safe.